went over a little bit, but only because we had a little bit to say.
Yes, no, why not grab that opportunity?
Exactly.
Hey, just hold on a second, Patrice, are you filming something in here soon?
So when I'll get you
cool.
to
look at you.
to me when you answer. Just avoid
That way or
comments.
that way?
Just here, just look at my face like.
Just pretend her voice is on her
Yeah,
face.
that's what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny setup when it's like this, but I'm ready to go when you guys are.
Yep.
All right, we are rolling, so whenever you're ready.
Cool, okay, so first of all, Enid, can I please get your full name and title?
Enid Ratahi Pryor, Chief Executive Te Tohu o Te Ora o Ngāti Awa.
Okay, thank you so much. So first of all, Enid, what do you make of the picture that is painted in the latest Independent Children's Monitor report?
Sorry, can we do that again? I just got distracted. Can you ask the question again? Sorry.
Yeah. So just with some of the stats coming out in the report, you know, around half of tamariki being registered with a GP, some of those checks going down and reports of concern. What were some of the other stats? Around maybe 65% not having the social worker coming within the planned time. What do you make of the level of progress 3 years on from the national care standards coming into force?
We haven't actually seen any progress since the standards come into play. It's disappointing, really disappointing to see that our tamariki are still not having their information captured in terms of whether they're attending a general practice, whether they're even going to school. Basic fundamental rights of our tamariki are not being captured, and if you cannot capture the data, what that suggests is it's not happening at all. Tamariki not receiving GP care, dental care and going to school is simply not good enough in today's world. So even though we're 3 years down the track, we should have seen some advancement, but what the data is telling us is that the data systems of Oranga Tamariki and the system overall are simply not good enough.
And so we can't rule out if it's happening or not, right? Like they might say, oh, we know it's happening, but we just don't have the data to show that. But your view is that's not good enough?
We actually know it's not happening. Our experience working alongside caregivers and tamariki who have come from Oranga Tamariki into the care of Ngāti Awa and into other iwi tells us that these things are simply not occurring. So no, even though the data is not being captured, that's because it's not happening.
That's really concerning. Just some comment around your perspective, you know, you're saying as an iwi group that you've got that data regionally, but then there's been no scooping up yet from the national agency. And yeah, I guess how does that feel? And just talking to you earlier, if you could go over, I'll just ask you if you could go over the implications for you of not having a system that allows you to look at what's potentially coming in terms of, you know, rangatahi tamariki you are getting to help, what it's like not getting that data in advance for trying to support them?
Yeah, look, locally, there's no doubt that we have the data. So we are collecting in our system, especially where there's integrated service provision, where we have hauora integrating with community care, integrating with care and protection. That data is actually in the systems of providers, local providers and iwi, and certainly for us as Ngāti Awa. So I know that the data exists at a local level. Getting it up from a local level into a regional picture, there's a struggle there, and it's because basically the government systems are just not set up to take the data from local level up to regional and up to a national level. So the systems may not be asking the right questions of each other. From a local level, we are asking the questions of, in terms of our tamariki well-being overall, education is critical, housing is critical, GP care is critical, tamariki order checks is critical. So we collect that information. Now, if the government systems from national and regional do not see that information as being critical to the overall well-being of our tamariki, it really questions what the role of the state is in providing overall wellbeing outcomes for our tamariki, for our mokopuna. And I think the answer is obvious.
Yeah, so when I see just a bit of background since I talked to you, they went to the chief executive and said, please don't wait for your work stream around data, you should be prioritising some of those key data points ASAP, and then they went back and I think October last year they had another meeting, I'm seeing the watchdog said, and there hadn't been that progress. What do you make of the scale of pace of Oranga Tamariki trying to address this?
Well, it's a system issue, so it's not just about Oranga Tamariki. When you're talking the capturing of information like general practice information, dental care, the systems are actually far bigger than one system that just looks at this from an Oranga Tamariki perspective. So there is a need for a major system overhaul that looks at these outcomes in a holistic way and not an individual way. So structurally, I see that the problem is that the current structure is just not capable of working in that way.
Requires massive change. What do you think is the pathway forward at this point?
Well, the pathway, in my view, can only be whānau, hapu and iwi looking after their own. It's been reported in numerous reports from the Ombudsman, from the Waitangi Tribunal reports, that hapu, whānau, hapu and iwi are the right people to be providing care for their mokopuna. And that's not just because of the value base and because of our connectivity in terms of whakapapa. That's also about the ability of our iwi and our providers to capture the right data. And many of our providers now work in an integrated way where we're fully integrating for whānau ora, oranga whānau, and we're doing it at a local level. So we need to tip the system on its head and ask ourselves different questions, not how can government change its way of capturing all of the data about our mokopuna. It's actually about how do we enable communities and iwi to collect their data about their mokopuna and report upwards the information and data that our mokopuna and whānau want reported.
That's really interesting. So in a way, you're saying that the infrastructure is better suited for it to be an on-the-ground iwi collection and then referral on instead of them trying to bring it all together.
Well, exactly. On the ground, we're actually already combining education data, social services data and hauora data. At government level, they cannot even report one government Oranga Tamariki data system. How are we going to get across government data systems operating? Because that's what's required. We're not made up of just one part, Oranga Tamariki, and that's it. We're made up of multiple parts. We're very complex. In the current system, maybe we shouldn't be investing in the current system. Maybe we should just go and invest the resources directly into the provider space, and that's what many of the reports the Waitangi Tribunal have actually reported on. Why would we build an existing system like Oranga Tamariki up, build its capacity and capability, when we can actually build the capacity and capability of whānau, hapu and iwi? I think that's actually what we need to consider before we go investing millions and millions of dollars into a system that really, when you look at it, if you cannot capture basic data like these mokopuna going to school, because they can't capture that, or going to the dentist, why on earth would we invest millions and millions of dollars into that system for no further outcome? That's what this report is saying. We need to listen to the report.
Thank you. That's a really fair point. So you see the report as further evidence that an overhaul is required?
Yes, definitely. I think the report itself contributes to the notion that services need to go back to whānau, hapu and iwi. They need to reflect locality and local service delivery, because that's where the resources are in terms of our community and our knowledge and our people. And that's the way we work and way we behave. we deliver in a way that's fully integrated, not like these standalone government departments. They cannot be nimble. They're not flexible enough to be able to achieve the sorts of outcomes that are required to change the lives of our tamariki.
Just to have for background, how many children is in Ngāti Awa's care through this overall oranga tamariki, but I mean that you are supporting on the ground?
So, Te Tohu Te Oro Ngāti Awa, we've been in delivery since Mātua Whāngai in 1989 when John Rangihau produced his Puautautatū report. In 1989, we started with 6 tamariki per night in care for 365 nights a year. Today is 2023. In emergency care with oranga tamariki, we have 6 tamariki in care per night, 365 days a night. Nothing has changed. However, we now have tamariki with us who are at the highest end, complex needs, needing support because of their historic trauma. We have 6 beds per night, 365 nights a year, dealing with tamariki who are experiencing high-end trauma. That is simply not good enough when you actually have providers who have existed since 1989 as care and protection providers under the Act, so fully capable to provide services, but nothing has changed. So the answer is that the government Department of Oranga Tamariki needs to move and make real change and stop talking about that change, because there are providers out there in hapu and iwi who are prepared and who are ready to take on the task of looking after our own mokopuna. Give us the opportunity to do that. And this report actually says that if you read it in the way I do. But more importantly, when I spoke to Aaron, the director of the Independent Monitor, he said to me that next year they will be focusing on 7AA, which is within the legislation to move our tamariki back to hapu and iwi. They also will be looking at meeting the obligations of te tiriti and the aspirations of iwi to deliver to their own. I think next year is going to be interesting when we can actually put the pressure on the independent monitoring body to talk about how are oranga tamariki doing, shifting all of these 6,500 tamariki back to hapu and iwi who put their hand up to do that.
Gosh, thank you so much, Enid. There's been so many strong points that you've made. It's going to be difficult to choose what can go in a short TV news story.
I know.
I really appreciate the kōrero. Is there anything you'd like to say that hasn't already been said?
Yes. Okay. So from today's presentation, we had a discussion around the Eastern Bay of Plenty and our desire to move towards iwi providing care for our own tamariki. We believe we can do that with the strategic partnerships that exist with Oranga Tamariki and Ngāti Awa and the Iwi Provider Alliance. So I think that the future is looking very positive under the strategic partnerships that are currently in place and being put in place with other iwi around the motu.
Good, and these strategic partnerships being put in place, but it's clear from your interview you want to see it go further in terms of, a full transition.
Oh, well, strategic partnerships and working with iwi is about iwi being able to take the lead. It's actually about iwi determining the direction. Currently, that's still not happening, with the decision making still being held by Oranga Tamariki directly. As soon as we can actually reverse that picture, I think we'll start to see a change in the trend.
Look forward to that. Thank you so much, Enid. I was just thinking there's probably not much footage we've got. Do you think has there ever been news come and film your work or anything?
Māori television, but not recently. They've only come to talk to us about whakaari and the floods, so nothing about service provision. Actually, we did have Māori television come about 2 years ago. I can't remember what the kaupapa was, but there'd be footage in the archives.
Because that's not our footage provider, like Te Karere, we in the same organisation, that Te Reo Tātaki, but that's all good. Even if I might just try to see if there's anything on your Facebook or anything, otherwise we'll just have to use like some generic non-ID shots to introduce you or something.
Sure. Well, these guys can send you some photos if they've got good ones from today as well.
Yeah, we just have moving footage as the preference, but I know it was kind of...
Yeah, if you, I'm on the Oranga Tamariki National website. If you check out Ngāti Awa Social and Health Services, there's a video where I'm talking. That was actually shot by one of the news agencies.
Okay, cool. I'll check that out. Thanks so much for that suggestion, and thanks, Peter, for filming this. I'll be in touch, Peter, once you're ready to talk about maybe like a wee transfer or something.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
Okay, Kate, thanks.
Hey, you have a good day.
You too. Here you go. Shall I send out Aaron? You guys come have lunch.
You actually.
Oh. Because you've got moving footage of me doing that kōrero, so you might want to